Excited to be here.
Very much so. This is my old neighborhood, neck of the woods. I'm a Texas-born guy, so I'm happy to be here.
One of the greatest cities in North America.
Can't beat the ATX.
That's right. Also been a lot of fun prepping with you, Kalen.
Absolutely.
It's been good stuff. So, as mentioned, we're going to talk about consumer centricity today. We have the honor of having Kalen here from, well, I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us all how you got to where you are and what some of your experiences have been like.
Sure. Happy to give a brief overview of the background. So, Kalen Thornton, born right up I-35 there in Dallas, Texas. Yeah, absolutely. You can rep for Dallas. It's all good. And was fortunate enough to come back down I-35 here to Austin, University of Texas, grad 2003, 4-ish. Had the privilege.
Hook 'em horns, right?
Indeed. Any of your horns, feel free to go up. If you put the horns down, I might have to come tackle you. But yeah, I played football here at University of Texas 4 years, and then was privileged to play professionally back in Dallas for the Cowboys for a little bit. Got hurt, and then worked in finance for a few years, and then had the awesome opportunity to go to grad school, intern between first and second year at Nike. And so I spent 10 years over at Nike, leading a variety of marketing teams across running, football, baseball, sportswear, and ultimately basketball. And then in 2021, right there, smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, I decided it was a good idea to relocate my family over to Chicago and join the Gatorade team. And so I've been with Gatorade for a couple years, and then now recently just got into this role across sports, entertainment, and gaming for all of PepsiCo beverages, which is Gatorade, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Rockstar. There's a lot of them. So that's a little bit about me. What about you, JC?
What about me? I'm
Tell
from
the people who you are.
I'm from Chicago. I work at Ogury. We've been around for about 8 years. Our mission has always been about the consumer privacy, building experiences that really help brands connect with consumers in an engaging and authentic way. GDPR came around and really was the stick of dynamite in how brands, how advertisers today are targeting those consumers. And we took it upon ourselves to say, as a global company, to say, you know what, we're gonna really embrace this privacy thing even more. We're gonna be the first company that is targeting advertisers in a cookieless and identityless way. So it's exciting, for what we can bring to the table. Powered by research to really authentically understand the attitudes of consumers, attitudes that are changing every day.
Absolutely.
And how help brands really connect with them and understand those consumers. So before I get into more questions for you, Gatorade is a brand that, Gatorade is a brand that, has been a big part of our lives for decades now. I mean, we all know it as a recovery mechanism for when we play sports, something that really helps us, with our performance in whatever we do. I think something that's not known, though, is all the work that Gatorade has done to really help foster a community around sports, around youth sports, collegiate sports, whatever those things are. But also a community that helps understand the health and performance aspect of the athletes and players themselves. Outside of Chicago, there's something called the Gatorade Sports Science Institute. I had a really good friend about 10 years ago. She was a marathon runner, ultra-marathon runner, triathlete. I mean, just an amazing, amazing performance athlete. She was invited to go into the Gatorade Sports and Science Institute to do some testing, right? They want real athletes to understand how Gatorade helps them perform. And during the testing, they found some abnormalities with her heart. She then went to the doctor and did some more testing, and it turned out she had a microscopic hole in her heart that, if not detected, could have killed her. So thanks to Gatorade, my friend's life was saved, and she recovered, and she's doing great now. But, that's just a story of the authentic way of which Gatorade is part of the community and is helping athletes.
It's you shared that story with me even before as we were talking, and it's an incredible one. And I will share another one. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to go to the University of Florida and the Cade Museum. For those who don't know, Dr. Cade was the one who invented Gatorade many, many moons ago. And a part of the build on your story is that a lot of the proceeds from Gatorade actually go to the advancement of medical sciences and researches for consumers across the world, even beyond sport. So in a little way, not only was it born from this very real functional need that athletes and consumers had, but there's a higher purpose there of just improving everyone's medical well-being and health that I think is incredibly powerful. And it's an attestament to what we're going to talk about today. Like, I've been fortunate to work with a few brands that are literally born from conversations with consumers, athletes in Nike's case and athletes in Gatorade's case, to where the innovation was from a consumer need. The way in which the brands connected with those communities was from a consumer need. And it really shows the power that you can have when you do focus on whatever that need is and how you can connect with them in a more impactful way.
Yeah, I think it's an important piece because all brands are really trying to, do more for the community. They should do more for the community. They're benefiting from the community. So, to authentically enhance what the community gets from that brand in a more impactful way is extremely important. With that, we're all seeing consumers that are evolving today. The consumer sentiment is changing faster than it ever has before. Our inputs as consumers, we're overwhelmed, right, with social media in general, whatever those things are. So attitudes are changing essentially on almost a weekly basis. Understanding those attitudes is really, really hard, and to get a pulse on the consumer to understand what's really moving them. For you, it's been the players, the athletes, right? But what does that look like for Gatorade right now?
It's still a similar conversation where like you want to be able to get out there and actually speak with your audience and meet them where they're at. And it's been increasingly difficult to do so, especially over the past couple of years where you couldn't even go outside in some cases. And where we're at today is like we're just trying to relearn that muscle. I think what has happened is that with the absence of connectivity in person, we've started to really increase and rely a lot more on different tools and platforms, which has been incredibly helpful. And I think you're seeing a lot more reliance on whether it's online surveys, whether it's polls through social media. Like, there's access to more information than ever. There's also access to more misinformation than ever. Mm-hmm. And so in order to be able to balance against that, you still need to be able to go out and have a conversation in person. And so not just for Gatorade, but for all of the PepsiCo brands that we're working with, we're starting to get into that cadence again of getting out into the respective communities and audiences and where we know we need to grow penetration, grow relevance, speaking more real time and having more conversations and a level that's not always just bringing you into a boardroom and asking you questions, but actually seeing you interact in your spaces. So whether it's at IMG Academy, which Gatorade's a big partner of down in Florida, whether it's at the local high school, the lunchroom. I got 2 kids, 13 and 11. I'm constantly grilling them and their friends. 1, because I'm nosy. 2, because
you're a good parent.
I'm learning. Oh, well, that remains to be seen. But no, I try. But no, I ask them all these questions because I'm learning from them, quite frankly. Because they're operating in a different environment in the world than I grew up in. So it's really important to maintain that real-time connection and those conversations. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think as digital marketers, often we get, we really lean into deterministic data. We really lean into more quantitative metrics. Well, the qualitative, to your point, is really important, like understanding how they're really interacting with those brands and getting a sense from them, from their mouth, right? Like what the importance of those things are.
Absolutely. I think we used to say this a lot at Nike, but across marketing, everyone talks about there is an art and a science, right? And that is within insights, that's within how you connect with your consumers, that's in how you think about big ideas. And so I think you need both. I think anytime you skew one way or the other, you're missing opportunities than which you can better serve your audience. And so like having that balance between the quant and the qual, between those tools digitally and getting out and literally walking around here on 6th Street or Town Lake and asking them like, what you're drinking a energy drink right now instead of a Gatorade and you're in the middle of a run. Like, why is that? Like, maybe not in the middle of the run, but you know what I mean? Having those conversations are critically important. So.
Yeah, I saw, when I was walking here this morning, I saw a group that just finished a 5K. There's probably 50, 60 people, and they're all crushing Gatorades, water bottles, Goop or whatever that is. Yeah, all that stuff. But really interesting to know why. Why do they lean to one versus the other? You've become a master storyteller. You've done some amazing. He's done some amazing work at Gatorade and Nike. And, consumers don't always get to see the hard work that goes on behind the scenes, both what you and your team do, but also your partners that are helping you tell this story, and or the athletes that are helping you tell a story. So what aspects of that creative process do you find, most enjoyable, and what are you most passionate about in that process? And I have to ask, what's it like working with some of these like super big celebrity personalities?
Stuff. One, I'm stealing that name, Master Storyteller. It's going to be on my business card from now on. I like that a lot. But I would say I truly fell in love with creative before I even knew I fell in love with creative. A big part of what resonated with me as an athlete growing up were those stories that I saw from a Nike or a Gatorade, whether it was Bo Knows or Like Mike, and I'm certainly dating myself. So if you all don't know those references, Google them. I promise you they're good. And so I got inspired by the brands. Not always to go out there and get the product, but I was inspired by those brands to seek ways in which I could be a better version of myself. Like it really motivated me to do things beyond what I thought I was capable of. Certainly coming from some of the areas that I came from, and like it just wasn't necessarily always attainable. So fast forward to the creative process, I became really curious on like how do you get to that idea? And we touched on it a little bit. Oftentimes it comes from those conversations with consumers. The best creative does. Like how do you actually speak in a vernacular that's familiar to them? And then in the case of both Nike and Gatorade, to what you mentioned, that connectivity with the athlete is also incredibly important on how they want to tell their story, because they are often the megaphones, the amplifiers to the messages that we as brands are trying to bring to the world. So what's it like working with like a Serena? It's amazing. These are they're icons. I will never forget the first time I had a chance to meet MJ, Michael Jordan, and that was like, I felt like I reverted back to being my 6-year-old self as a little kid, like, hi, Mr. Jordan, I work for you, nice to meet you. And so there is certainly a humbling element to it, but I will say this unequivocally across anybody I've ever worked with, and there's been a ton, they're still human beings. We all are. This is a business of human connection and intimacy and relationships, and as much as you may have in your mind about a celebrity or athlete or all-star, at the end of the day, they are still, like we're having a conversation now, like you all will have over the course of this weekend. They'll joke with you. In some cases, they'll cry with you. In some cases, they'll drink with you. In some cases, they won't. It's kind of like any other interaction with a human being. When you relate to them like on that level, then you start to realize that, we're all just people here.
Yeah, it's first time I met Michael Jordan, he was hitting golf balls into us because we were playing too slow in front of him, but he wouldn't pass us. But afterwards, he sat down with us and bought us sandwiches and beers and stuff like that. And turns out the guy's just an awesome dude.
He's like my old great uncle. I'll put it like that.
Don't tell him that, though.
Please don't. Yeah. Please do not record that part. So.
Yeah, I think that these brands that tell these stories like a Gatorade and like a Nike, really impact generations. I was a kid. I grew up with Michael Jordan. I didn't grow up with him, but he was. Coming from Chicago, he was the man. I mean, everywhere you look, the icon. He changed sports marketing. The first person to put on shoes with his name on them. That changed a generation. My kids all have to wear, it's a little expensive for us, but they all have to wear Michael Jordans now, or Air Jordans. So, these brands that are bigger, they become bigger than the origins of those brands. How do you look at that as you think about that next evolution of Gatorade, of PepsiCo?
I'm not going to lie. I think it's a tough balance because using the same reference, you start to appreciate that people certainly follow brands. You have your favorite brands unequivocally, no doubt. But they tend to get influence and follow people over brands. the people that represent those brands are what make the connection in the case of Michael Jordan. And in the case of Gatorade and PepsiCo and some of our other brands, like who we put out there in front of us becomes a manifestation, a representation of a brand. And for today's generation, there are so many more centers of influence, and there's so many more micro communities now. And you have the proliferation of all these different creators. The creative economy is a real thing. And so the hardest job is like, how do you actually associate yourself with the right one? How do you actually still maintain that level of authenticity that goes back to the DNA of your company and what you want to be known for, and then marry that up to where we're at today? And it's something that we're still trying to learn, to be quite honest.
Yeah, because it's not just the athletes anymore, right? Or the professional athletes. There's this world of influences out there. And I was telling someone today about Mr. Beast. I don't know how they never heard of Mr. Beast, but and he is changing my kids' lives. I mean, they want burgers that he makes.
Absolutely.
Also. So that's a really interesting space, the influencer. Some could be great. Some could be flashes in the pan. Some could be dangerous for a brand. So how do you guys measure that? How do you guys really ensure that it's authentic? It works within your broader omni-channel storytelling objectives, and gets and mitigates that risk.
I mean, when you're dealing in consumer goods, like I think the bare minimum is ensuring that anybody you partner with is actually a fan of your product. Like if you're bringing someone on that does not authentically use your product, it's likely not going to be the best fit over the long term. And so oftentimes, a lot of the conversations we have when we're thinking about partnerships start with people that are already engaged, they are already using. It doesn't mean necessarily they're promoting it or a part of our campaigns, but we can go to evidence, whether socially or something we've seen in person, and see them leveraging the market. And that was the same thing at Nike too. I think that was unequivocally a part of the deal. From then on, then it's really looking at the opportunity costs and understanding what your objectives are. Going for reach is different than trying to drive trial for something that's a new innovation that you just launched. Going for awareness versus engagement on a content franchise that we're about to launch, different applications. And so when you're thinking about who you partner with, and by the way, it's not just always individuals. It could be, in our case, a team, a league, a platform. Like you've got to be measuring and thinking about all those success metrics up front. And then from there, you start to use the filtering process to determine who's the right fit. And sometimes you win, and sometimes you miss, and that's part of it. And so you just got to be able to navigate through that.
But you have to continue to test. I mean, there's
absolutely
right. So there's, like we were talking about earlier, there's proliferation of all these new platforms. Influencers come and go, but if you don't test, you don't learn, and subsequently, you might have missed opportunities to ride that wave, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think it only gets exacerbated because depending on what audience you're looking for, like there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Like there's not a unicorn influencer that's a monolith and it's for everybody. So you've got to understand the dynamic between certain individuals you pick with. Like, does it actually make sense for them to be a part of your conversation or not? And that's something, when we're talking about the opportunity with people of color or women or whoever it may be in terms of the demographics, there's going to be different influencers, different partners that resonate with them in varying ways. So.
That you bring up a good point there too. We started talking about this a little bit early on when I told my story of my friend, but really the importance of brands using their platforms to drive social change, right? And really face cultural issues head on. So I'd love to hear more from you, like just what PepsiCo is doing, what Gatorade has done and continues to do to help drive those important changes or think through those important things.
It's a good one. I tend to. I know people use the vernacular purpose marketing a lot, especially of late, and I think it's critically important that we address different communities and initiatives that are important to advancing society. And stop. But I often feel like part of your purpose should also be ingrained in your mission. And in case of the brands that I've been fortunate enough to work for, both Nike and Gatorade and now PepsiCo brands across the board, that purpose is ingratiated into like, hey, at the end of the day, two of the brands believe that there's a better world for people that participate in sport than if they don't, in terms of mental wellness, in terms of physical ailments and overall health. So that is a purpose, bringing smiles to consumers' faces at the center of Pepsi. So I think it's important that you have them inextricably linked. So that's the first part. And then when you think about the role of leaning into important conversations that help you advance that mission, I'll go to one example. This past year, one of the icons we were talking about, Serena Williams, decided to move on from the first chapter of her life in terms of being a competitive athlete. And we had an amazing opportunity to celebrate her with this piece called Love Means Everything. If you haven't seen it, please go check it out.
Amazing. Please check it out.
I still can't get through it without crying. Like, without question, every single time I watch that, I tear up. And a lot of that piece, and a lot of that storytelling is not about the product. It's all about Serena's impact towards young girls, young women who are unapologetically wanting to be the best version of themselves and are not being constrained by any barriers in doing so. And our brand, our job as a brand is to champion that. And so it's not just about Serena's legacy on the court and the trophies. It's about the other million, even billion girls out there that are trying to be their Serena, whatever it is to them. And it doesn't have to be in sport. So I think that is that confluence of purpose and mission coming together, personified. And I think brands, when they really make those types of stories and advance initiatives like that, that's the authentic way to do it. It's not just slapping your name on a initiative and saying, hey, we're going to give back and that's it. It is really having it integrated into everything, how you show up as a brand and your DNA. So,
right on. I love that. I think that's one. The Serena thing is amazing. Everybody should watch that immediately if you haven't. Yeah. But two, it's helping amplify what she has done so that others can take inspiration from that, because her story and her sister's story are truly remarkable.
Absolutely.
So, you think about those messages you create, these really emotional messages, and you think about all the channels in which you can reach consumers. How are you and your team really approaching the distribution of those messages? Start there.
Yeah, that's one we're still learning, to be quite honest. I think we've done a lot over the past, I've been with PepsiCo, with Gatorade now for 2 years. And so I won't speak specifics, but we've looked at the overall channel mix on how we're investing in media. And in an organization that had been predominantly linear, TV linear, where like the ratio is completely skewed the other way now. So when you think about digital channels, when you think about streaming and some of the other areas, like we're certainly leaning more into that, which is amazing. What it also has shown, though, is like when we start to think about segmentation, when we start to think about different elements of the content that needs to be edited for those respective platforms, still a lot of opportunity there. To do that at scale requires a level of resources and expertise that I think a lot of brands struggle with. Like they either go too far or putting out too much, or they don't go far enough. Yeah. So finding the right balance is something that I still think we're looking after. But I will say we're learning so much about how to drive the right message to the right platform for the right audience that I think we're going to get a lot better at it here in years to come. So.
Yeah, I think it gets really expensive to create the content, number one, but then to version it and or re-edit it for all these disparate platforms is really expensive. So you're working a lot with partners to help you kind of really make the most of that content and make it work on their individual platforms. And I think that's a great opportunity to that can be leveraged out there in general. The other thing that I'm guessing is challenging, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is just how you're measuring both the long-term value that you're establishing with the consumer as well as the short-term. I mean, there's a lot of talk in the last several years, really, around how the marketing funnel is all but collapsed, or now it's more of a meandering, stream of success and whatnot. Just more on how you guys are looking at measuring long-term and short-term.
I mean, it is the million-dollar question. I was having a conversation with some peers the other day, and we were kind of going back and forth on even how prevalent performance marketing is become a part of the vernacular, and all marketing should be performance marketing to some extent. So we certainly have been talking about that. But look, I think it's going to be being able to have both a short and long-term perspective. That one, at the end of the day, marketing is a growth center. So understanding in the short term how we're driving actual returns and value is a big one. But then being connected to long-term equity is also equally important. So the way we look at it, we've started leaning into flywheel vernacular and starting to think about like how you can bring more consumers back into your ecosystem, and almost using the funnel to bring them in. And then how do you serve them once you actually have them a part of your core, whether you want to call it membership or loyalty program. So that's one way. And then the other way, we're looking at how like the overall household penetration. Like, are we actually getting the right gains in certain audiences and areas? And then I'll kind of come back to where we started. We've got to be in touch with consumers, and so having social listening, having that real dialogue out there, and getting that candid feedback from consumers. It's out there. People are not short of opinions today. They are not. And so, like, if you don't know where your brand stands, for the better or for the worse, then that's on you. You just haven't asked the question, or you don't want to hear it. And so we're using all those ways in which to understand how we're showing up for our fans, for our consumers, for everyone that we serve. So.
Well, you're certainly part of the community. When you talk about Gatorade, you talk about youth sports, you talk about, I think I've benefited as a coach, right, in rec leagues of having Gatorade, probably because they had a big presence in the town I live in, but them sponsoring the teams and helping build the fields and keep the lights on, so to speak. So I appreciate all that Gatorade has done in my community as an authentic way to help my children, get the most out of their community, their sports.
Absolutely. No, I think, in the case of Gatorade, showing up in those communities, supporting the advancement of sport, like that is incredibly critical to us. So I think we might be are we getting the...
We're not
do we need to wrap it up?
We're not getting the boot yet.
One more? Let's get one question from the audience.
Yeah, I'll let you all select,
Sure.
but I see a friend in the back that might be interested in asking a question.
Okay, sorry. I'm one reason.
Okay.
Thanks, Kalen. Jerry Canning with NCM. Having grown up with Gatorade, I've been a brand advocate forever, and it was easy. It was a non-competitive marketplace for the most part. Now, with so many other brands nipping at your heels, could you give some more examples of how you're connecting with the young audience to win their brand love?
Now it's
really quick. Are we talking what's now being coined as Gen Alpha?
I have. I've got a Gen Alpha and a Gen Z in my house, so like I know all the tea. I honestly, one thing that Gatorade has done incredibly well since inception is they've had relationships with non-traditional influencers, and who I'm talking about are the coaches, trainers, teachers, faculty, in all of the schools across America. So that's really one of the areas that we constantly go back to when we're starting to see a new shift, generation to generation, a new behavior. And we try and understand, like, hey, what are you all seeing across a multitude of dimensions around, like, what the kids are talking about, but also in terms of their needs. So that's one. I think the area that we still have opportunity on is to do that through those channels, but also do it through some of the new creators and influencers that we were talking about today, and the competition that has gained inroads against us, and there's not much. We're still, we still got incredible market share. They've been able to tap into communities where we're not as present, and so like I think that is one area that we're consistently looking to as we think about broadening the definition of an athlete and how you serve athletes. Where are some areas that that may not be traditional stick and ball, that may have different centers of influence beyond the athletes, so where we can lean in a little bit more, and you'll rest assured you'll see a lot more of that from Gatorade and all Pepsi brands moving forward. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your expertise.
Thank you all for having me. Gonna go get some barbecue now.